All right, everybody, welcome to Follow Up Boss Office Hours. We're going to be focused on reporting today and excited to dig in. Some of the things we're going to cover are some of the basic features and functions that are built into Follow Up Boss reporting, best practices for tracking the data so you can discover opportunities. You got to have the data to be able to use it. And then also how to evaluate performance, measure results from that, and make better decisions. So my name is Lee Adkins. I'm the head of growth at Amplified Solutions, and I am joined by Jennifer Haight, who's the senior customer success manager at Follow Boss. How are you today, Jennifer?
I'm doing well, Lee. Happy to be here with you today and dig into the data together.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. I know you and I have talked a lot about reporting and all things Follow Up Boss, but from my perspective, I think you work with some of the bigger groups, some of the mid-level and bigger groups, and you really probably see a lot of how people can potentially be using this at a high level. Today, I think we're going to focus a little bit on basics. I don't want to get too crazy with stuff. Obviously, there's some other platforms that you can potentially add on, like a Sisu or an Octum, and those are great and those are fantastic tools. Today, we're going to focus very much on the reporting that's baked into Follow Up Boss and how to use that to make sure you get good data into it and you're leveraging it. So, Jennifer, do you have anything specific on reporting you want to cover up front, or do you want to just dive right in and share your screen?
I'm happy to dive right in here. One thing I think is a good thing to remember, and Lee, I don't know if we have any kind of poll or see like who's with us today, if you guys are mostly team leads and admin, I think you are. But one thing I get asked about sometimes is whether agents can see their own reporting data in Follow Up Boss, and they can. And that's a really huge way of kind of helping them connect the dots between their goals and their targets and whether they're doing the work that's going to get them there. So I want to touch on that a bit too when we're looking at the reports, what the agents on your teams can see as well.
I'll pull together a poll while you start demonstrating. I'll see who we got on.
You're just going to whip up a quick poll in Zoom. Zoom master. All right, everybody should be able to see my screen now. I'm in Follow Up Boss. Just fair warning, I'm in a demo account, so I have a little bit of data here. When you guys click into your own reporting tabs, you should have all of your real data. So if you're following along with us and you've got your own Follow Up Boss account open and you click into reporting, I hope you see lots of really great data there. So just to kind of catch everybody up to where I am in Follow Up Boss, I'm logged in, of course, from the computer. I'm looking at the reporting tab up here at the top. And this is where we're going to spend our time together today. This is where reports are. I also really like to just throw out a plug for smart lists anytime I talk to somebody about reports, because the reports we have here are kind of some baked in preloaded metrics. They're doing some calculations, they're pulling together some data in a cool way to see it across like agent or lead source and time frame and stuff like that. But anytime I start digging into my data or working with a team who's really digging in to see like what's working and what's not, where are our gaps, what are our opportunities to do better, to convert more leads, are we getting a hold of people at the right time? All of that really great kind of deep diving. I started looking at smart lists, and we'll click over to that a couple of times here, but I just want to plug that because if you are new to Follow Up Boss or you haven't played with smart lists much, do that. It's super, super worth it. I'm going to pause and see who I have with us real quick. Give everybody a chance to answer this poll.
Cool. Can you see it, Jennifer, before I
publish it? I can, yeah. I don't think I can see answers yet, but I can see the poll.
Okay. I'm going to close it out here in just a second.
Oh, I see an answer in the chat. Thanks. Vic, we are recording this for
yes.
Playback.
Yes, I neglected to cover the housekeeping. Streaming live to the Follow Up Boss success community on Facebook. So it's always available there. And the recording always comes out on YouTube and in the Friday email. So yes, we're recording. and you got options on where to find it. So now you guys should be able to see the poll results. So
yeah, awesome. That's super
ops
helpful.
people, nerdy ops people.
You guys are my people. And with an ops person, I'm like, yes, let's geek out on this together. That's painting with a broad stroke, but I love it. All right, that's really helpful. I mentioned the smart list, and just in case anybody here is not familiar with what that is or where that is, that's on the people screen. And that's like the saved filters. It's my segment of who are my leads created in the last 14 days, called less than 3 times, haven't been attempted again in the last 6 hours. That's that zoom in on this segment of leads. All right. We could have a whole conversation about smart lists, and we have, and we'll continue to have them, because smart lists, I say it a lot, but there's money in the smart list. It's true. So if you're not familiar with smart lists, I would recommend getting familiar.
And speaking of YouTube plugs, we do have a prior office hours on smart list that breaks it down. But to your point, Jennifer, that's a great point, because that's how you get the good data in there. That's how you get the who hasn't been called that I should be calling, or who hasn't been contacted in 30 days. So certainly knowing who to call feeds reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the topic of the day, the reporting. So the fun, energizing report that is relatively new. So if you've been with Follow Up Boss for a while and haven't gotten in and played with this, is the leaderboard report. This is under reporting and leaderboard. I like to start here because this is just a really cool view across my team, my agents, to see how are we doing, what are we doing. This is scored on the leaderboard, so it's looking specifically at a couple of metrics: how many appointments, conversations, and this conversations number we'll talk a little bit more about when we get to the calls report. But the idea is it's not just the number of calls, it's how many calls lasted this certain amount of time and qualifies a conversation. How many outbound call attempts have we made, text messages and emails. So each of these gets scored and counted up here and ranked ranked by the score. So Lee crushed it and like really pulled out the stops to populate this, this demo with some data.
We had a scheduled webinar, so it was time to make some calls.
But the really cool thing about the leaderboard is everybody can see it. So competitive agents, people are on a call night, like you can pull up this leaderboard and see not just your own metrics, but across the team. How do you compare? That's the swift kick in the rear sometimes to pick up the phone and make some more calls. A couple of just controls here is you can filter the leaderboard or kind of switch it to show just your team. If you're on a platform plan in Follow Up Boss, there's that team structure. So if you've got like an ISA team and you only want to see those people on the leaderboard together, you can quickly filter that way. Sometimes we get asked like, I don't want to show up on the leaderboard because I'm not actually, same as these people. You can hide specific people from the leaderboard and change the time frame. The leaderboard also has that cool feature where you can go full screen and put it on the TV in the office, and on a call night or something, it adjusts real time as people are making calls and setting appointments. Super cool. Anything you want to throw in there on the leaderboard, Lee?
No, I think I love the full screen mode. I think a lot of people, the exclusion and the full screen, I think are really big to drill down, because some people may have an ISA or somebody. So excluding the person whose job is to sit and call people all day, obviously that makes sense. Or if somebody's not in the room and you're trying to do it, something you could even do, this isn't the perfect use of this, but if you were going to do one-on-ones with people, you could use this. You can still drop down per agent. Or if you had a small company meeting, you could always exclude the people not in the meeting, just so you have like, all right, well, let's compare you 3 that I'm sitting here talking with. But yeah, it's really great. I think what's cool about this is it's such a great snapshot, right? Like some of us really love the data and the spreadsheet and the click on this to drill down. But I think this also gives such a simple, just overview, just at a glance. And one other thing, and you might have covered this while I was tackling something real quick in the chat, so apologies if you did, but if you mouse over the items underneath each person, it shows you a point value assigned, or if you over the number. And so they are weighted. So a call has more weighted value than them sending an email. You cannot edit that at this time. I know that question's coming. But I think they're pretty solid weights. You know, they're pretty, you know, they work. So David has a good question about a way to filter out by number of calls, number of texts, and emails from the leaderboard. That's a great question. I mean, obviously you can't do that now. That is a good feature. I'm going to add that to my note of features to bother Caroline and the product team with.
And that's a good plug for the new roadmap that is here.
Yes.
That's come out like last week. You guys can add your own feature ideas there. There's a little plus sign in the bottom. We are always interested to hear what you want, what's helpful and why, what you're trying to achieve with it.
That is a great one. And he also asked about filtering out stages, which also you can't do in leaderboard specifically. Obviously you can do that and drill down a little bit more outside of the reporting.
Yep.
But I don't believe there's a way to even filter by stage in the reporting at this time. So
that's right. That is something we've heard. And yeah, I want to keep hearing that because that's a good way of kind of slicing that pipeline and seeing when we go from new lead all the way to closed deal, like where are our opportunities? How are we moving people down that pipeline? Stage is a really great way of tracking that. So yeah, that's a great feature request there. There's also a deals leaderboard. So in our reporting, this is a good time to just mention some overall controls here in reporting. Up in the top left, these blue text, and we'll see it on some of the other reports. This is a drop down to flip over to some different reporting views here. And on the right-hand side, top right, there's always some filters around who's on this report. These buttons change a bit depending on what data we're looking at, but who's on the report and the time frame are always up here.
Let's explain web leads versus all leads real quick too, because that's always a interesting, I won't say point of contention, but in essence, web leads are going to be leads that came in through lead flow. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, that's going to be API parsed by email, came in from something outside of Follow Boss versus imported or added by hand. Right.
So those can skew sometimes if you have a newer agent who just did an import or they're typing in people. So that's the difference, but you can view either or both. But sometimes I'll see people log in, they're like, whoa, why does so-and-so have so many leads? And they're like, well, they just imported their sphere. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so we can jump over to do you want to go to agent activity lead sources next or head over to like calls?
Yeah, let's look at a couple of the preset drop downs actually, just here in activity. Yeah. I think it's good to actually just see what some of them are. I think specifically the leads not acted on to me is a really good one.
Yeah. Before we dive into that one, I come to this total lead count and total agent activity. I like this kind of high rolled up view as a starting place. If you're just getting in with your data and you're just seeing, hey, what's going on? You're kind of curious, approaching this with curiosity, right? Like, how are we doing right now? I like to start on that total lead count and total agent activity and just look big picture. Let's look at all leads. Let's look at in the last month or something like that. I almost picked the wrong one here. And then take a look at what this looks like. The structure here is that we've got some data showing up here at the top. And again, I'm in this demo account, so it looks a little funky with a whole bunch of zeros.
I was cramming yesterday.
Somebody didn't send us any leads for a while. And these cards here that are showing things like number of new leads, number of texts, these can be edited with this add columns. You can add more here, like leads not acted on if you want to see that in this view. But I like to come on down here to the bottom as I'm just kind of inspecting what's going on here and just see these counts. This is by agent over here on the left. And then my columns, it's the same as these columns that are up here. It's controlling them in both places. Like new leads, how many calls have we made? How many emails? Again, this is controlled by these filters up here. So this is in the last 30 days. Caroline's made 5 calls and Lee stepped it up recently and made 8. If you have a big team or you have a lot of agents, or you're just trying to get a quick ranking, this is a fun tip. If you click on the column heading here, like calls, it will sort on that. So I know we as a team, if we have a KPI around how many calls you're making a day, we'll sort on this, and that really quickly floats up the people who are hitting that and shows me who's not. And really great ways of just quick manipulating that data to get that snapshot of like, okay, Lee, you're on track. Caroline, you too. Bridget, we need to, what's going on here? And then we can start drilling down and seeing what is going on here, explore that further.
Yeah, and to that point, that's what I wanted to emphasize now and on the not acted on. Like most places in Follow Boss, if you click on that number, it's going to take you to those contact records. So if you want to see who they called and who they emailed, it takes you right there. So
my pro tip here for efficiency, because man, I joke, am I lazy or am I efficient? And the jury's still out on that, is if I've drilled down on this and I'm interested in calls, these are the 8 people they called, I land on this. This is like the smart list view again, right? When I click in on this first person here, I like to use my filters button to just see the stuff that I'm interested in. Maybe I'm exploring, are we calling these people more than once, or how long has it been since we called them? Or I'm trying to kind of get at a pulse of what's happening on these leads. I'll just take out some of these activities that I'm not interested to see and show the ones that I am. And that kind of zooms in the timeline on those interesting things. And I can arrow through using this arrow in the top right to look across each of these leads. What's going on here? What happened here? What happened here? It's a really great way of kind of seeing that high level number and then diving in and seeing what's really going on with them. Mentions usually come into play here too. Hey,
yeah,
Lee,
yeah.
you called this person, but what happened now?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I do that. I'm big into that. Like, hey, and that can be a reminder or a win. It can be, hey, great job, calling this guy 4 times in the last couple of days, or it can be, hey, you might want to follow up with this guy, or hey, check these notes and give this guy a call or whatever.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of the mention there.
Cool. The other thing that I get asked about a lot is what's the difference between appointments set and appointments on this report. So I think it's worth just talking about that quickly. Appointments set is tracking appointments that were created by that person in this time frame, and appointments is counting appointments that happened in that time within this time frame. So the reason we split this out is if you're running an ISA model and you have someone who's responsible for setting appointments, but they're not necessarily going on that appointment, this helps you pick apart those 2 different metrics, because those are different metrics in this case.
And you can set an appointment for someone else. So definitely makes sense.
Yeah, in case nobody knows, or I'll just quick show that. Well, the way that works is when you click schedule an appointment in Follow Up Boss, I clicked it, so I'm getting credit for this creating the appointment, even if I don't go on it, and I invite the agent, let's see, Caroline's our agent here, to it. So now I get credit for appointments set. Caroline's going to get credit on that appointment. We're going to come back to this type and outcome on appointments.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that that's where they live if we're setting this. Cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. So you wanted me to kind of dig in on this drop down up here.
Specifically, the not acted on is a powerful one. If you've either got agents for training or an ISA calling people, drilling down on the leads not acted on is really, it's just such an easy feature to find people to contact, Yeah.
Yep.
You want to find who to call the people who haven't been acted on. There you go.
That's it.
Notice how mine is 0. I'm just saying.
That's true. You're crushing it as of 12 and a half hours ago.
You're right. 6 of my leads.
Yeah. So this report that we're looking at under agent activity, this is all slicing it by agent. So we've got each of these counts by agent. The set of reports next to this, the lead sources, this is slicing a little differently. So this is based on lead source. So what sources are closing most deals? What sources are we getting the most leads from? What's our conversion rate by source? That's the kind of stuff we're pulling in on this lead sources report. I'm sometimes asked, I'm just going to hit our FAQ while we're on this page. If I look at this and I see like this source name and it's like, what is this? This should actually have been our postcard or something like that. You can clean these up a bit. If you're an admin on the account, by just hitting that trash can to delete the source and picking what it should be instead. We'll take care of the rest. We'll take everybody that was in that one source, switch them to the other. They'll show up in this going forward. So that can be a valuable thing to do, especially if you're diving into your data for kind of the first time, or you haven't really spent a lot of time or energy on this, is asking, how do we want to see this kind of information? Because if you want to see it a certain way, then like you mentioned your import, maybe an agent imported their whole sphere and there's a source on this report called import. Well, is that helpful, or would it be better if we went into that agent's import and we changed all those source to be sphere, and then we can really easily see that on the reporting? That's the kind of thing I mean by kind of taking control of that so that it's showing you what you want to see.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people have old lead sources that they're not using anymore, and some of them have multiple names. So this is a great way to easily clean that up for sure. So
yes,
cool.
yes.
That's great. Here's a quick question I want to tackle. I was going to wait till we got through the things, but I think it makes sense now. Sydney asked about saving smart reports more with the preset filter, almost like a smart list. Like, hey, here's one I commonly go to.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight on that, or?
Yeah, Sydney, when you filter up here at the top, like if you set this to a specific team or everyone and put it on a certain time frame, we'll remember that setting. So when you come back to the report, it should show it that way.
I was going to say, I thought they were sticky. I mean, mine do
they're sticky. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. There's not like a save button to be like, I want to save this as the way I look at my, last quarter of whatever. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good request. But yeah, I was going to say, I mean, as far as what the drop downs are, and any of the drop downs, as well as if you check the compare previous period, those do always say the same for me when I come back. So I don't know if it's different in different browsers potentially, but I wouldn't.
It may.
I wouldn't think so. But that's a great question.
Yeah. Very
appointments. Good. Okay. Yeah, the follow up to that maybe is appointment. So that makes sense.
Yes.
And we will dig into appointments in a minute too. But yeah, I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yep. There's a
I'm sorry. One other quick question. I'm just trying to tackle these. If you guys could drop questions in the Q&A, it's really helpful, because in the chat they start to get lost and I forget about them. But can you view pawns if you change user? Can you change user to pawns? I don't even know that. I feel like I should know that.
Pawns get counted under the pond lead as the agent.
Right, but I mean, if you drop down everyone, can you select pawns?
No, it's not in this filter.
Okay.
This is going to be like by person. So like if Caroline was our pond lead, those would show up there.
Oh, interesting, but not by pond. Okay, cool. That's let me make sure I tackled all of that question. A question about let's move to a pond, and then we get a total view that includes. So yeah, there's your answer. They're included for now under the agent. I'd imagine those would get broken out at some point.
Yeah, and this one we're listening for feedback on that. Like, what are you looking to see in that kind of pond report? Because I think there's a few different things that I've heard people looking for. So just one more plug to say, come on over to this roadmap and hit that plus sign and share that feedback. Awesome. Any others, Lee, before we?
I mean, I think to use those first two to get started, and then you start to see the value and, oh, look at this, what lead source has the most activity? Like, it's great that we think this is a better lead source, but are people just calling more on that one? But I think as with everything, if people will adopt it at a small level, then ultimately they will, they will start to use more of the features.
Yeah, I'm reminded of.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I see Tony's question there. I'm reminded of. I heard Kyle Whistle say it recently, like inspect what you expect, and it's this whole. To me, this viewing of the reporting is part of that process. We've set some goals for the team. We've got we've told them what we want them to do. And now we're coming back through and saying, are we doing it? Is it working? What changes do we need to make? Those are the kinds of questions I approach our data with.
Yeah, that's great. You want to tackle Tony's question super quick, and I'm answering a couple in the chat real quick.
Yeah, Tony, I can also follow up with you more on this later if you guys are using ponds heavily. But yeah, when you, it depends on how looking at this time. It's looking at if the lead is assigned to the agent now. So if they're still have the lead assigned to them. This one I think is conversations helpful here. All right, let's go to the, I want to make sure we talk about appointments and deals, because those are two big areas, well, calls, three big things that really feed the reports.
I think we can push through them all super quick. I just think, you know, we can spend less time on lead sources and properties, but I want to show properties. So
yeah, do you want me to knock that one out?
Yeah.
Yeah, the properties report is pulling in the inquiry address, or the address people were asking about. That's coming from any of those sources like Zillow or realtor.com or your website or HomeLight or wherever these addresses are coming in from, and showing it on this map view how many inquiries you've had. Lee, do you want to?
Yeah, I think this is really powerful if you are getting a lot of inquiries, you know, for a listing appointment or a listing presentation or anything, to be able to pull up, say, look, we've had 1,000 inquiries on homes in your area. I just think this is such a powerful tool, and or to compare, you know, where you're spending money to where your inquiries are coming from. I mean, you can't drill down super granularly in the sense of say like, oh, show me these or show me only Zillow. But I mean, again, at a high level, just seeing, oh, look, we're getting a lot of inquiries in this area. You know, we're spending money in this area, we're getting inquiries in this area. You know, something we should be looking at. And yeah, I love that you showed that. So you can click through and find the actual people. So reverse prospecting is also a thing. You can easily say, hey, I just got a new listing in this area. Would you like me to send it over?
Yeah. Yeah. Grabbing them here and doing a batch email, for example, or a calling list if you've got the dialer and follow-up boss.
For sure. Cool.
Awesome. So all the reports are made smarter by the more data they're getting, right? And that data is coming in from email, and that should be easy. That should be not even a thing you have to worry about because of the Google and Office integration. So that's automatically syncing in emails. Texting and calling, if you're doing those in Follow-Up Boss, that's giving you more robust data because you can start to see how many texts am I sending? How many calls am I making? How many of these is it taking to get to an appointment and to a deal? Like, what's our conversion rate on those kind of conversations? And who needs more help there? Maybe there's some coaching opportunities. Call recordings are helpful for that if you're making those calls through Follow-Up Boss as well. If you have the dialer in Follow-Up Boss, you'll have this report called calls. If you don't have a Follow-Up Boss dialer, this report just doesn't show up. But this one is pulling in some more data around things like talk time. And going back to our idea of those conversations and that how long did the call last, counting as a conversation, the dialer can see that because it's going through Follow-Up Boss. So I like this report for getting a sense of how many calls are we making, what's our talk time looking at, our missed calls show up here. And kind of, it's almost like a call funnel, right? How many calls are we making? How many are connected? How many were conversations? What was our total talk time? That's telling, like you start to see trends there across the team and who's successful.
And I think it's also like, I don't want to sound rude with this, but I think, you know, we have agents that'll come to us and say like, hey, I'm not getting any good leads, or hey, I'm not this, or hey, my numbers are down, or, you know, something to that effect. Going straight to something like this, just to look at an immediate glance of like, oh, well, look, you haven't made any calls, or you only called 3 people last week. And again, not in a negative way, but in more of an educating, like, okay, well, let's see why that is. You can see how many leads they got, and then you can see how many things they have. Now, to be fair, this calling report is not tied to leads per se. That is calls total. So
total calls, yeah.
Teach them on calling their sphere, following up with past clients. I mean, there's always an opportunity in this, you know, to
Kelly, I'll go back over and show you that here in a second.
Yeah.
Lee, to your point, I like this view too for that. So I've looked at the calls and it's like, well, you say you're not hitting some targets, or we're not giving you good leads. You've made 4 calls this week. And then looking across here, because this is a good snapshot of calls, emails, texts, notes, tasks, appointments. Like, what else you got? Like, you know, where are we hitting on across all of these?
Let's start there. If you haven't done these things, then we don't need to be.
Let's start there. Yes. Exactly. Kelly asked about, is connected just if they pick up, or a voicemail? This is based on time. So connected is a minute or more. And so a voicemail usually would fall into that. You listen to the greeting.
There's no way to differentiate. We don't know if they picked up or their voicemail picked up.
Exactly. We are not spying on phone calls to know that. Conversations are going to be ones that last 2 minutes or more. So the idea here is that you can have a quick, like, oh, call me later, or leave a voicemail, or not interested, hang up. But a conversation is going to be a little bit more time. So we drew a line and said, let's say it's a minute, let's say it's 2 minutes. And that gives a good indication of like length of call, how long we talked.
So I've seen people use those as their metrics. Like, I don't really care how many outbound calls you make. How many people did you talk to?
Yeah.
And that's a really easy way. Albert Vasquez did there's a great boss method with him where he talks about that. That's the only metric. And he actually screenshots this and posts it in their Slack or Workplace or whatever platform they use daily, like a couple of times a day. He's like, oh, well, you're at 5 conversations, but so-and-so is at 7. So, but this is a great, you know, Jennifer, I love that first screen as the snapshot, but this is really kind of where the money is. Like, if you're not having conversations, then
I spend some time in our team's call reports because of that. Conversations is one of those indicators that, you know, the phrase, if the water rises, all the boats rise. Like, if you want your conversations to go up, you got to make more calls.
Yeah.
You can't get more conversations unless you make more calls. So it's that kind of driving indicator. Like in Albert's case, you're at 7 conversations. You can't have more conversations unless you call 5 more people, 10 more people.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So deals and appointments, I want to switch over to quickly. If you don't have calls, it's because you don't have the follow-up boss dialer. So we can check into that.
We can tackle that super quick. You can add that as a one-off user. If you're on the pro plan, you would have it, and up to 10 users, and the platform would obviously have it. So it's an add-on if you're a single or a legacy user. But yeah, it's a great feature. I'll try to see if I can find a recent video we did and share it in there.
Yeah, we've got a lot of them. So appointments report is pretty new, and there was a question about this in the Q&A a second ago, so I want to touch on this. The appointments report that shows up here under reporting is fed by appointments. So if I click over to another lead page here and add an appointment, this appointment type and appointment outcome show up on that appointments report, as well as the appointment itself. So if you're setting your appointments inside of Follow-Up Boss, that's showing up there on that appointments report as well. Your connected Google Calendar and your connected Office 365 or Outlook calendar, so many names for it. Those appointments sync over there as well. So setting them here, they're going to show there, setting them there, they're going to show in Follow-Up Boss, that calendar syncing. There is a beta feature. I'll just throw this out here. Under, let's see, power-ups. If you're an admin, there's a new beta out around appointment reminders right here. This is to send the lead a reminder text message ahead of the appointment. It comes from the same number you've been texting them through on follow-up, or texting them with through Follow-Up Boss. It says like, reminder our appointments today. If they reply back, it comes right back to you. This is a cool one to turn on if you're setting those appointments here in Follow-Up Boss, because that setting to send it out is right here. Send appointment, invitation and reminder. That's what it would say if I refreshed my page.
And it is, to be clear, it is a group text as well, which is pretty fantastic, because if whoever responds to it, like if they respond to the text and say, oh, we're a few minutes late, that all works and it shares the stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And you would get the notification because they're texting you back. There it is. Send a text reminder. So appointment types and appointment outcomes. This is, if you're starting to track how many appointments are we setting, it's helpful to know what type it is. Is it a showing, or is it a listing appointment, or whatever you're tracking to? Very similar to how you set up your stages in Follow Up Boss. You could name these anything you wanted to name them. But to me, the value is, what are you looking to measure? Which ones do you care about right now? Just start there. And I always say start simpler than super complicated on something like this. If you are the account owner in your Follow Up Boss account, under admin and way at the bottom of this menu, you'll find appointments. This is where you can set custom appointment types and custom appointment outcomes. And that's for everybody on your account. So when you're setting those appointments with that type and then coming back and adding that outcome, all of that feeds into this appointments report. So we can start to see how many appointments have we set. The created by is right here. This is who set the appointment. What types were they? What was the outcome? And start to get at those metrics for where are our gaps, or our room for improvement to up our conversion rates here. Anything to add there, Lee?
No, I think if you guys aren't familiar with this is a relatively new feature that some of this was rolled out, and some stock types rolled out. But really, to Jennifer's point, I mean, to me, this is almost like stages, right? Like you want to keep it simple, but you want to be really clear about what does this mean, you know, like what are we measuring? Are we measuring, do we do virtual consultations now? Like, is that something we need to add so we can see, like, oh, our virtual is converting better than our in-person, or listing versus buyer, or do you have a pre-listing or a pre-buyer? Like, tying this into your business, the ability to customize it, but also keep it simple. Because if you have 50 appointment types or 50 stages, you're not going to get, the good info. But then also drilling down by the outcome. So if your outcome is, and again, being smart with your outcomes you create, is it listing appointment 1, or is it appointment 1? Like, what are you trying to measure? Because I think ultimately, if you want to say listing appointment is the type, listing appointment 1 or listing appointment lost is the type, now you're getting good data around, oh, look, we had, 5 with these people and they were 1, and we had 7 with these people and they were lost. Then you can drill into the differences, or, is it the agent? Is it the lead source?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, those appointments start feeding things like the leaderboard and that agent activity. So it's all coming back up into that other data that we were looking at. The deals I want to talk about for a second, if I can hop over here. So deals live up here. This is the deals pipeline view I just clicked into up here at the top. Agents on your teams can see their own deals or deals they're part of. You as an admin see all the deals in the business. When you put a deal in this closed stage, there's one stage on each pipeline marked closed, and I mean it with this red closed right here. That's the one that is counted as closed on the reporting. So I just want to connect that dot there, because when we go to deal reporting, and there's actually a shortcut to jump to it straight from the deals pipeline, that closed metric is treated a little differently than the other stages. So if I come over here back under reporting and under deals, this gives me that sort of pipeline view. How many deals do we have in the active stage and the pending and the closed? These are custom stages, can be customized. So I was talking with a team yesterday who was setting up theirs as contract written, contract accepted, and like these were the KPIs that they were reporting on. So they just set their deal stages to match what they care about there. That if you take away nothing else from the webinar, take away that put in the structure that you're wanting to measure on. And for things like these deal stages, the appointment types, that's where you have so much opportunity to take these reports and have them show you what you're looking to measure. Let's see. I see Tracy's question there. You want me to switch back to that for a second?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. That's fine. Tracy, on that new power up that I showed, the reminder text, we changed how that checkbox works. So it used to always be checked, so everybody would always get that notification, and now it's not checked by default, but if you check it, then they would still get that invitation. It's a good reminder that that appointment title is seen by them. I treat it like an invitation, so it should be like showing appointment at whatever, not oh great, those guys again.
that was a quick pain point. I remember talking to some people about that too. It's like, let's not put anything in there that's too private or gate code.
Hey, Katrina, I'm really glad that you joined this today. I see your question here about how do you change the
let's tackle that.
Yeah,
so you can change the name of closed, but one still has to be closed.
One still has to be marked closed. Yep. So the owner, the account owner, is the one who can change deal stages for everyone. You can change an existing one by just mousing over it and clicking the pencil and change the name. Maybe this, we want it to be under contract. You can also add a stage. It's over here on the right. If you've got a bunch of stages, just scroll to the right and you'll see it. Add a stage will create a new one. And you can change the order of them around so that this is showing you want progression here, right? That's what we're tracking on these. The individual deals show up like these cards, and they can also be moved. You know, click and drag over to progress. Cool. While we're on this, there's everybody's account by default has this buyer's pipeline and seller's pipeline. These are separate pipelines in Follow Up Boss. So in the reporting, you'll see that we're looking at one pipeline or the other there. You can also add pipelines from your account owner account. So if I have worked with some people who have like an investor pipeline, or they track a certain type of deals completely differently from everything else. I even have, I've worked with somebody who was using a deals pipeline for their recruiting. And so they were creating
about to say, like, that's perfect,
a recruiting pipeline. Yeah. Yep. And so you can
Kelly,
make another
let's tackle Kelly's question, because that's a great question. So so Kelly's question is, can the cards move by changing the stage? Not exactly, but the exact opposite of that can happen, because an automation was just added. The deal stage change can be a trigger. So the deal stage change, moving the card, is a trigger now for automation. So it can change, it can do anything that an automation can do. Change a stage, apply an action plan, pause an action plan, add a collaborator. So kind of is the answer. The opposite of what you asked is possible.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a good time to mention that, you know, where that deal progression comes into play is sometimes different from like your outbound prospecting stuff. This is, we're now tracking this as an opportunity or a deal. So we're not necessarily putting in a deal for every lead that's in our database.
Right. Like one is, I'm glad you said it that way, because I try to kind of teach around that too. Like one is conversion, like lead conversion, and one is like, okay, this is a client now. Sometimes I think it helps people to kind of differentiate those two. It's like all the stages and all that stuff is more about like getting them from a lead to I want to talk to you. Yeah. This is once they start, you know, getting in the car with you or signing paperwork.
Exactly. And that the way you phrase that, I think, is really helpful for agents on the team too, to just see where that line is. You know, if they're riding around in the car with you or following you right. in the COVID times or something. Right. But that's when we want to start tracking it this way. I just clicked over to this deal stage automation to show what Lee was just talking about. So if you haven't played with automations yet, these are relatively new as well and getting more powerful all the time. So we've recently added a trigger to the automations on deal stage. So what that means is you could say, when we change a deal stage to this, like closed, then we want to start this action plan, which notifies our, you know, transaction coordinator of something, and it sends an email to the lead, or it adds a note, or changes the stage of that contact, that person changes this stage here to past client. So you can kind of tie those things together for your own team's process. Cool. I feel like we've touched on so much.
I know, it's tough.
Good stuff.
In one sense, we want to be focused and walk people through everything. In another sense, there There are lots of
there's so much power in the deals to see where it all plays together. Like if you're coaching your agents to work and follow up boss, here's where it all matters. Here's where it all comes together.
Yeah, I really still to this day am astonished when I'll be on with somebody or talking to somebody new or looking through their account with people, and I go to this, people are like, oh wow, like people are not, for whatever reason, living in this as much, I think, as you know, as I mean, nobody lives in it as much as they should, but you know, it always blows my mind how many people I show this to and they're like, oh wow, this is great. I should be using this. And I think to that point, you know, that basic adoption, like we talked about, right? Like pick a couple of things you're going to do. Check the calls, check the agent activity, check the calls. Yeah, I think if you get too caught up in, oh, I'm going to check deals and leaderboard and the appointments and all that, then, you know, you're maybe never going to get around to it. Another thing too is to potentially put it in your calendar. You know, I say if you're an operations person or a team lead or a broker owner, you're just putting in like, hey, on Fridays at 4, I look at the reporting and send out a quick note to every agent that's like, hey, great job, you made a bunch of calls this week. You know, like just those little touch points, or hey, I check in on Monday and then again on Friday. So, you know, then, you know, I can follow up with them or remind them that I'm going to be checking in again on Friday to see how many calls they made.
Yeah. This is a part of really solid KPI, you know, key performance indicator, if people aren't familiar with that terminology, or goals. And it's valuable. There's a really valuable exercise here for your team and your agents as well. So what I mean by that is like, they can come in here and click on this calls report too, or they can come in and click on the agent activity too. But if they are reporting back to you, like if you have that in place where it's like at the end of every day, tell us how many calls did you make? How many texts did you send? Or how many conversations did you have? Or whatever those, it doesn't have to be a lot, just a couple of key performance indicators. That's the K of that. The key ones, not every single thing they did. There's huge value in that self-reporting, and that there's a lot of accountability and ownership in that. And so I sometimes talk to team leads who are spending a lot of time in this report or in these reports and trying to kind of pull levers to make things better. But there's a piece of that feedback loop that isn't necessarily happening with their team, where you're saying, hey team, this is our goal. This is what we're driving for and why. And to keep you accountable, send this number every day, or post it in our Slack, or post it in our Facebook, or whatever that is, because it's different. I promise you it's different for the agent to say it than for you to go in and say, here's what everybody did. It's just a different, psychologically different motivator there.
And similarly, if you are struggling with adoption or getting people to make their calls from within the platform, it's also just a great way to, you know, there's you know what's going to happen. Somebody say, oh, I called them, I just didn't log in, or I didn't, you know, like, all right, well,
yeah, I did it on myself. And then you go, if it's not in follow-up, boss, it didn't happen.
I mean, seriously, you're not getting credit for it.
It's true.
And not to be rude about it, but I mean, on some level, production is the answer too. Like, you're always going to potentially have that agent who's maybe not so great at the system, who's doing 10 million or 12 million a year, and you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm not going to pick that battle. But again, to the training level of the person, you know, on your team who's like, hey, all these leads are terrible. Like, yeah, have you called any of them? You know, like, yeah, I'm sure you think they're all bad, but you let the auto response go out and they didn't respond. So let's maybe try a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one report up here that we haven't dug into.
Let's tackle that real quick, and if we don't have any more questions, we can wrap in a minute. If you have questions, drop them in the Q&A for us. But let's do hit batch emails. I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah. So batch emails. Where batch emails actually happen is out here on the people screen. So I'm going to plug our smart lists again, because there's money in smart lists. If you've got that good segmentation in your database, that's a really great way of doing that outreach for batch emails. When you batch email through Follow Up Boss, you're grabbing the people, selecting them, hitting batch email. You can use a template. I highly recommend templates if you're doing this frequently. Merge fields are here, all that normal stuff. You can also send this out to every email address you have for someone. So if you've got 2 or 3 emails for somebody, you can hit them all. Puts on your signature. It's all the good stuff. If they've unsubscribed, it's not going to send to them. All of that's already baked in. So just come in here and send the batch email. That's the takeaway. Once you send this batch email, it will show up on reporting batch emails. So you can see here when it happened, the status of it, just some diagnostics kind of stuff, but also the how did it do? You sent it to 5. It went to these 2. Nobody opened it, Lee. You probably need a better subject line than ignore this. But if you've got your marketing effort going on here, look at that open rate. If you're getting low open rates, fix your subject line. Okay, that's like the pro tip there, or try another subject line because people are opening it or not opening it, first of all, based on that subject. What you got, Lee?
Yeah, 2 more big things on that. If you click on, if there were opens, if you click on that, it'll take you to the people that opened. Yeah. But also when you mouse over it, it shows you the unique. And so I wanted to explain unique super quick.
Yeah, that's good.
People aren't always familiar with that term. Unique is, so somebody could click it 5 times and it would count as 5 clicks. But when you mouse over it, or in this case in sent, it'll give you a unique number. So that number will only be 1 if somebody clicked it 5 times. But I still think it's an important data point to say that somebody, or maybe they forwarded it to somebody. But yeah, so if you mouse over it, it gives you that unique. And I think drilling down on clicks is big because potentially you want to follow up with the people that, depending on what the email was, maybe you want to follow up with the people that clicked the link in your most recent email, or an email that you sent 3 weeks ago, or whatever. But in order to find that prospecting list or create the smart list, there's another simple way to do it. So
yeah,
Jennifer, you want to tackle some of those? No, go ahead.
Yeah, let me hit on those. Lisa asked about the difference between unsubscribe and bounces. Bounce is that the email didn't make it to that person's inbox. So it could be like the email address was bad and it bounced back, or went to spam or something like that. If you're getting a really low deliverability, like you have a lot going to spam, we have some good diagnostic tools on our team does. So if you're having issues with like hearing that your emails are all going to spam or something like that, we can help with that. Sometimes it's funky stuff, like there's a link in your signature that Gmail's marking as spam for some reason. I mean, we've seen it all. So we can help with that kind of stuff. Unsubscribes is if somebody actually clicks the link to unsubscribe. So we're keeping you compliant here on things like batch emails and action plan emails by offering an unsubscribe link at the bottom. And if somebody clicks that, then they won't be sent a future batch email or a future action plan email, but you can also see that they unsubscribe. So we're showing it rolled up here on this report. You could click in and drill into it. It also shows up when you look at that specific lead, like when you're on their page directly, that email will show up here and it would say unsubscribe. So you could see what they had unsubscribed to. They also get tagged unsubscribe. So it's in all the places.
And that it one, yeah. And one quick pro tip on that too, is that if you are sending a one-off email, even as a template, it does not affix automatically the unsubscribe. But literally, if you send it to more than 2 people, it's just canned spam stuff. It will automatically be appended to it. So just bear that in mind. If you're sending something and you don't want it to have an unsubscribe link, you might send it as a one-off. Don't go spamming people, but just an important note to mention.
That's true. And also, even if somebody is unsubscribed to your marketing, you are still able to send them a direct email. Yes. So that would still go through. Good point. A really great time for batch emails, just to kind of tie the loop here, is you've imported in your sphere, your past clients, and you want to send out a quick batch email and kind of get in touch with people. That's where I like to go back to those open clicks. If you put a link in the email, that's what's the click is counting. Like they've clicked on these links in your email, like a link to your website. That'd be another time to send these out. That can be a good way of kind of surfacing like who's still interacting with me, who's still opening my emails, because those could be the list then they're calling or reaching out to in some more personal way.
That's great. Awesome. A couple more questions and then we'll
yeah, so Sydney asked about exporting for reports. Yeah, we have actually batted around this idea. This would be a good one to put on that roadmap. I'm going to show it one more time right here. Go in here, click the blue plus down here in the bottom left and add your ideas. That is where we're watching for that kind of request. Yeah. So one quick thing on that exporting, we've heard that from people, like I want to click export because I want to pull this out into like Excel and or Google Sheets or something and play with it more. One quick pro tip, because I do this a lot for our own reporting, is I copy and paste from down here. I just grab all of this, hit copy and take it into my spreadsheet and paste it. And that's a pretty great way for snapshotting it. So we'll do some week over week reporting, like, okay, we want it for this week, and we want it for next week, and we want it for the next week. And I can pull it up in here, but again, going back to that idea of kind of like that self-reporting or that scorecard reporting, sometimes that's a good exercise of just kind of capturing it. And so if I'm doing that across the team, I will just copy and paste it like this.
And that's a great workaround. And I don't want to get too wrapped up in this either, but you can add columns and export all columns. Now, here's the thing. When you add columns in, I'm sorry, back in the people screen, if you add columns, because there are a number of isn't there a number of
number of calls made.
Do those export in a full export? I feel like they do, but I can't honestly recall.
Yeah, a few of those don't. Yeah, a few of them don't in the full export, but those numbers that are here, like talk times like that, snag that way. But to your point about the smart list, I do put some of those columns on my smart list, like number of calls or talk time. Some teams use that talk time as a metric for whether or not we've actually connected with this person. You may have made 10 calls to them, but if your talk time is 32 seconds, safe to say that's total talk time with this person. Safe to say we have not actually connected with them yet, right? Good stuff. Let's see, on the call logs, if you are logging your call, Kelly, this is your question. If you're logging your call in Follow Up Boss like this, log call, maybe no answer, or you're adding your notes, or you're doing that through the app on your phone, the Follow Up Boss app on your phone, those will count as calls. But where we don't have quite the same visibility as the others is this talk time. So this call was made through the dialer in Follow Up Boss, so we know it was 54 seconds long. This one we just logged by hand, so we know it happened, but we don't have that kind of talk time information. But they still count on reporting.
And I'm sure people know this, but I just want to add on to that super quick that you can dial out from the app as well. So also be sure you always have the updated version of the app. I know this isn't exactly the question, and I don't want to sound like I'm
always good to remind.
But you're dialing out from the app will do that. And I haven't called out from the app personally in a little bit, but does it still prompt you after you hang up to leave a quick note? And okay.
Yeah. Very good. I love how we were like, maybe we can wrap up early, and look, we are on the nose.
Well,
we use every second of it.
Yeah, all great questions. And Jennifer, do you have anything? Grant, we tackled that earlier, but it's under only admin.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's admin and appointments, and this is for the account owner is the one who can
way at the bottom. Yeah, and only the account owner, the person who opened the account, can edit those. But yeah, admin, appointments. It's at the very, very end. It's literally
the last thing. Yeah.
You probably have to click on more unless you have a really wide monitor.
That's right.
Cool. Well, Jennifer, thank you for being on. Such great info. Do you want to take us out with any reporting words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would say go forth and explore your data. Ask questions of it, dig into it, make little changes, and then check back on it and see how it reacted. Did those changes impact your conversion rate? And rinse and repeat again and again.
That's perfect. Very good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys all for being on, and I hope to see you on the next office hours. So take care.
Awesome. Bye.